Why is it a great mystery that even Edelman says he doesn't know what he tested positive for?
Well, what happens sometimes with these tests is that there's something they find immediately recognizable, and that was the case here. And sometimes it's, it winds up turning up a positive because a guy's testosterone levels are off. Sometimes it's, they find something when they look deeper into it. And so, what I can tell you, and I don't know exactly what substance he tested positive for, or if it was just that the levels were off and they flagged him on that. I do know the fact that the test didn't come back with something immediately recognizable is going to be central to his defense. And I also know it's not the first time that that's been a defense used by a player. And so we'll see whether or not it works for him.
So his defense is going to be that he didn't know, or he doesn't know how it got into his system.
His defense is going to be something along the lines of, you don't know what that they didn't know exactly what it was at first, and that there could be some sort of gray area there. I mean, honestly, I wish I had a better handle on how to get into the science on all of this, but I can tell you that it was that initially, when the results came back initially, that the substance wasn't recognizable. They took a second look at it, and something has to go into that letter, whether it's a substance or whether it's his levels being off. It was one or the other, and so that gray area there is going to be part of the Edelman defense. Have
we had a case of a steroid user who was on the cusp of being a Hall of Famer, or the possibility of going into the Hall of Fame, and what value does that have if you're a steroid user? Right? Rodney Harrison, who's probably, Rodney should be up for the Hall of Fame with 30 sacks and 30 interceptions and a couple of Super Bowl rings. He tested positive. Sean Merriman is not a Hall of Famer. I'm trying to think of anybody who has been busted. And Antonio Gates is probably going to be the test pilot here.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think Rodney pops into my head as one. Although, if you remember, his case wasn't a positive test. It was that, he got something shipped to his house. And so that was a little bit different. But, Rodney's case, as far as the Hall of Fame goes, is also – it was just – if you remember, it was like the Hall of Fame case for Rodney is a little bit more convoluted because he only made a couple Pro Bowls because of the fact that, there were people in the league who didn't like him and didn't like his style of play and all of that. I'm sure you've talked to Rodney about that in the past. I think with Sean Merriman, if I remember correctly, he was up for Defensive Player of the Year, and then the question becomes whether or not you can vote for him if he's got this on his record. And so it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think Antonio Gates would be one that would be a test pilot. I think Julian Edelman would be another one. And when you tie those three together, taking the Merriman case out of it, I think in every one of those cases, there's a simple explanation that I think a lot of us would subscribe to, which is, player's been banged up a lot. He's in his 30s, and he's trying to get back and maybe reach to the point of frustration and decides to himself, I need a little bit of an edge to get myself back on the field. And look, I mean, Dan, I think you know as well as I do. I think the general public is, for the most part, been a little bit more understanding about that sort of thing with football players than anybody else, probably because of the nature of the sport. And the interesting thing is going to be whether or not, the Hall of Fame committee would adopt the same sort of, philosophy on that, where they would say, well, he had a lot of great accomplishments through his 20s and into his 30s, and then he got popped making a mistake trying to get back into the field in his 30s. Are you going to look at him completely different and assume that he was doing it his whole career? Yeah. Or are you going to look at it and say to yourself, he was just doing that at the very end when he was hanging on? It's an interesting question to ask.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.